What's up guys, Andre here, and today I'd like to show you how you can use Bootstrap with Vue.js. There are several ways to go about doing this and several libraries that try to accomplish the same thing. However, for this video, we'll be using this Bootstrap Vue library, which seems to be the most popular and the most active one out there. Now obviously Bootstrap is the most popular CSS/UI framework out there, and there are a lot of people using it. For any interactive components, it still relies on jQuery to get them to work. The trend over the last few years has been to move away from jQuery and move towards these data-driven frameworks like Vue or React. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we can use Bootstrap components with Vue and this library. After we take a look at some of the components, we'll build out a little login component, which I have a screenshot of here. So here's what I came up with, and we'll be building this from scratch after we take a look at some of the components. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's go into the docs here, and let's go ahead and install it. It'd be nice if there was a Vue CLI 3 plugin that does all the setup for you, but I haven't found any yet. Maybe they're working on it, but we'll just do it the old-fashioned way for now. So just npm install it as you see. Okay. Oh yeah, and I already have a Vue CLI 3 project scaffolded out, so make sure you do that before. And now we have to register it in the entry point and use it. So let's go ahead and go into our code. The entry point is here in main.js, so we can just paste that in. And what's next? And we have to import the CSS files. So we can just do that here. Okay. And as you can see down here, there's a section for Vue CLI, but it's still using Vue CLI 2 and its template system, which you can still use in Vue CLI 3, but I like to use plugins if they're available, or just do it the old-fashioned way. Scroll down here. You can actually pull in only specific components if you like, and that can save on bundle size in the end if you're just using one or two components. But we're going to be looking at a few of them, so we'll just keep it like the way it is. So if you're used to using Bootstrap already and you're sort of familiar with Vue, then this will be pretty easy to use. In fact, the documentation between this package and the actual Bootstrap package is pretty much almost exactly the same, but obviously this one's for Vue and this one's for just normal Bootstrap, so everything's very familiar. So I like to start off with layout. So let's go ahead and go into the docs for layout. So layout and grid system. And let's just go through some of these examples here. So let me start with this one here. I'm just gonna copy this and go into our code. And let's go into our app view. Let me just get rid of all of this and all of the CSS. And let me paste that in here. And I'm not going to bother fixing the indentation for everything because that's going to take too long. So let me just save these and let's see if this is working. So there you go. What did we do there? We just made a container, a row, and 3 columns. So this is probably easier to see if I put some lorem text in here. And the same for these ones. Lorem 20 and lorem 20. Save that. There you go. We have a basic 3-column layout here. And in Bootstrap Vue, everything is a component, but that doesn't stop you from just doing it the normal way like you would do in Bootstrap. For example, this would just translate to a div with a class of container, and then that would have a div with a class of row, and then I believe just a div with a class of call. So call times 3. And then lorem 20 same here, and same here. And that would be exactly the same thing. So let's see if that's the same. And it is. So if you're not sure of how to do something in Bootstrap Vue, just do it the old-fashioned way. And that should be okay. Okay, what's next? Let's take a look at, let me just switch this up so I don't get confused. Okay, we took a look at this already. Okay, so setting one column width. So right now, this is dynamic. Let me get rid of this. In that, if I just add another bcol, then it's going to know to add another column. So there should be 4 now. And there is, cool. But if you want to set the width of one of them, then you would do it like this. So for example, if you want one of them to be this, and the column length is 12, I'm sure you knew that, then you would just, let me just erase this one, set it here, and let's make this one 6, and then the other two would fit accordingly. So the middle one should be larger, and it is. All right, what's next? Okay, let's take a look at offsetting. So it's pretty straightforward. You just set this offset here if you want to offset one of the columns. So let me just show you. So this one we'll copy. And just from reading this one is equivalent to this, where we have one that's size 4, and then the second one is size 4, but we're offsetting it by 4. So let's just see if we can get that to work. Let me just make a new row here. B row. Oops, I already had a row in there, so let me just do that. Okay. Okay, so there it is right there. Let me just put some lorem text in there. And so there you go. This one is offset by 4. This one's offset by 4, I mean. Cool. Let me just put a rule. There you go. So just you can see it clearer. Okay, let's take a look at responsive classes. And again, if you're familiar with Bootstrap, this should be very familiar to you. Instead of using calls, we're going to use the breakpoint name. So either small, medium, large, or extra large. So let me show you what I mean. So for this one, for example, instead of calls, let's just put, let's hard code a column width here for each of them. Let's make them 4. And this one too. So that should be the same. Okay. But if we want them to stack at a certain level, you see that they remain in thirds all the way down. But if you want them to stack after a certain breakpoint, so it follows the mobile first approach. So instead of calls, we would just set this to the breakpoint name. So say for medium, we want it on medium breakpoints, and before that it should stack by default. So if I resize my browser, then when we get to the medium breakpoint, they should stack, and they do. Cool. Okay, let's take a look at alignment here. So the first one here is vertical alignment. So let me just copy this. Actually, let me copy this one because this one will be centered. So I'll paste that into our code. Let me just put a horizontal rule here. Paste that in. And let me just put a class on this so it has a height, so you can see the vertical alignment happening. Let me just name it height. And let's give it a min height of 10 rems. And this should be centered. Let's actually give it a background too, so you can see it. Background, light gray. Okay, so these 3 columns should be centered in the middle of the row vertically. And there you go. And you can also do start and end. So start will be on the top and end will be on the bottom. Cool. And if you want to do it horizontally, it is the same thing, except you would use this syntax here. So let's make another section here, paste that in, and these should be centered. And they are cool. So I want to say this before I started the layout, but all of these UI component framework libraries do layout in slightly different ways, but their underlying implementation is the same. They're all using Flexbox and maybe CSS Grid. So I highly recommend that you learn both of those so you can do your own layout, and you could just use Flexbox or CSS Grid across any project and it will be the same. So yeah, definitely learn those 2 technologies if you don't know them. Okay, now let's take a look at some of the interactive components. So let's start off with a good old button. So as you can see, here are all the buttons and their variations. So let's go ahead and copy this. Let's go into our code. And I'm going to use this one here. Let's put it in here. And paste that in. And the size is going to be either small, medium, you don't have to specify the size, or large. And the variant is these options over here, either primary, secondary, success. So let's make it success. And let's just change this to my button. And there you go, there's your button. And as you expect, you can just put a click handler on this and handle it however you like. Handle click. And down here, let's make a section for methods. Handle click. And let's just console log handling. So let's just open that up, make it bigger. And there you go, handling, cool. Okay, let's take a look at alerts here. So let's take a look at this dismissible alert. And this one in particular is this one here. So let me just paste that into our code. And let me put that into the other column. So here, let me just reindent that. And we need this show dismissible alert property. And then it just sets it to false here. So let me just grab that from here. Yeah, it's just a state or a data property here. So let's go ahead and put that in. So right here, let's do data, return object, and show dismissible alert false, set a comma there. And let's see if that works. So yeah, now we need a button to toggle that. So let's just use our current button and change this to this.show dismissible alert equals true. And that should show it when we click that button. Okay, cool. And this should hide it. Awesome. Okay, let's take a look at forms here. And you can see all the form components here. But there's an example of a whole bunch of form components here. So let's just copy all of that. So all the way up to here. Let's go back into our code. And I'm going to make a new row here. Let me just make a row, B row, and space that in. And we're going to need all that other stuff. So let's get the form data here. There's also foods for the dropdown, I believe. And I'm not sure what this show is for. Let's just copy it anyways. So this is all goes into our data property right here. And then we need these methods as well. So for submit, it just alerts the JSON stringified version of whatever is in the form fields. And reset just resets the forms. So just grab these two. And it's here, I think. Paste that into methods. Right here. Paste that in. Okay, let's see how that looks. Okay. So here's a form here. And let me just open up Vue DevTools. So you can see all of the form components getting updated. So email at email.com, Andre, and you can see the food update as we change this dropdown, and this checked array is here based on what we check. And if you submit it, there should be an alert with all these values. Cool. So pretty much what you expect from a form in Vue. Okay, let's take a look at modals here. So I'm going to copy this, and this is the actual content of the modal, which won't show initially. And then we need a button to toggle that on and off. So let me copy the modal first. And this can go anywhere. Let me just paste it down here. And I'm going to make another row. And put an HR in here. And let's put the button in here. So let me just copy this and paste that in here. And this should toggle the modal if I did it correctly. And there's that button. And there's the modal. Cool. So there's actually two ways of toggling modals, or more than two ways, but two main ways. And the way I'm doing here is using directives, which is the recommended way. And it's probably the easiest way. So as you can see here, or even in the example, you just give it this VB modal and then the name of the modal. So the name of the modal is right here. It's called modal 1, and that should toggle the modal. So this is what this is saying. But you can also use show and hide methods if you like. But if you do that, you have to set a ref on the modal over here. Right here, it's called my modal ref. And then in the methods, you can just show and hide the ref. So yeah, directives is definitely the easiest way of doing it. So I would stick to that. Okay, let's take a look at popovers. So I'm just going to grab this. And as you can see, this one works on hover. So let's see if that works. This is going to be right next to our modal button. So there should be a hover here, and there is. If you want it to be a click instead of a hover, I think you just have to change this to click. I think. Or no, that doesn't work. I think you just take it off and click is the default. So yeah, it did work. I just had to refresh the page for some reason. So yeah, there it is on click. And now let's take a look at tables. So tables, to populate the data for tables, you use data properties. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's make another row and paste that in. And we need this items property here. Let's just put it straight in the data properties. So let's put it here. Items and paste that in. Oops. Let's just re-indent that, or at least somewhat re-indent it, and put a comma there. Okay, cool. That should work. And there you go. Cool. And there are dozens of components here. I can't go through all of them because this video will be too long, but they are pretty straightforward to use. And if you're already using Bootstrap and Vue, then it should be pretty intuitive. Okay, now let's make a little login component like I showed you at the beginning of the video. So I'd like to start by having a nav bar, and I'm just gonna copy this one that's in here. So let's copy that. And I removed everything in the template so we can start from scratch. I'm just gonna paste that nav bar in and let's see how that looks. Okay. You can change this color. Let me show you where. You can specify a variant here. So for example, if I do success, that should change it to green. But you can also just do it the old-fashioned way, where you just set a class. I'm going to set it to nav background and just set it to whatever color you like. So I'm going to remove this, nav background, background 353535. Cool. Okay. Now I just want to position something in the middle here, and this is where our login component will go. So let's go ahead and work on that. So up here, after the nav bar, let me just make a container. So B container, and then B row. I want this to be centered, so I'm going to do align H equals center. And I also want some padding on the top. So Bootstrap has some utility classes by default, which is great because I'm very used to using utility classes because I use a lot of Tailwind CSS these days. And let's put one column in here. And let's make that span like 5 columns. And let's just see how that looks. So let's put some norm text in there. And that doesn't look centered to me. What did I miss here? Oh, sorry, typo. Okay, cool. Now let's make use of another component, and that is the card component. So if I go down here, there is a very basic card, and we can make use of this. So I'm just gonna put that in here. And I don't want it to be text center, but I do want some padding. So I'm gonna do that. And let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks pretty decent. Now I'd like to add a subtle gray background. So let's go ahead and do that. And I also want to change the font just so it doesn't look very bootstrappy. And just changing the fonts makes a big difference in my opinion, just to make whatever you're making less bootstrappy. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go down to my style. And I am going to write some styles for the body. Background is going to be a light gray. So E, F1, F4. And the font family, I'm going to use Lato or Lato and sans serif. And let me just import the Google fonts right here. I'm just going to paste it in and see how that looks. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, now let's start adding the form in here. So back to our code, back up here. So right in our card here, Let's first add a heading. Let's give it a class of MB4 to add some margin. Let's just say login here. Okay. And now I'm going to use the form from the example here, and we'll just modify it as we need to. So I'm just going to copy all this again. And we already have all this in our code from earlier. And I'm just going to paste that right underneath this H3. And I'm not going to care about indentation. And let's see how that looks. And that actually looks pretty decent. So let's just start removing stuff that we don't need. So we don't need this. Never share. So let's look for that. Never share. Let's just remove that description. Okay. And this is obviously your password. So let's change your name to just password. And the model is going to be form.password. So let's change that. Form.password. Cool. And the type is password. Make sure that works. Cool. And we don't need these foods here. So let me just remove that. It's this whole group we don't need. Just gonna remove that. Okay. And we only need one checkbox. So I'm gonna check that out. So this one is gonna be gone. Let's give this a value of remember. And let's change this text to remember me. Cool. And we can get rid of this reset, but we'll just leave it and see if it works actually. Okay, it does. We'll just leave it in there since it looks decent. And let's just put a space between them. So we'll put a non-breaking space. Cool. And that's actually looking pretty good. Let me add a forgot password link here. So to do that, I'm going to use flexbox and just justify content space between this and this. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to wrap this in a flex container. So I think the utility in Bootstrap is called deflex. So that's going to make a flex container. And to justify between, I believe the class is justify content between. And these two should be on the left and the right since these are flex items. And they are cool, but we don't want that. We want this to be one flex item. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we want another one on the right. And that's just going to be a link that says forgot password. Okay, cool. That looks pretty good. And just for fun, let's make this open a modal when we click on it. So just like in our example for modals, we'll use the directive to open it. So, and the modal name is going to be modal1. And I'm just going to grab that modal from my code here. And I'm just going to paste it in here anywhere. Just put it down here. And let me show you what that opens. And yeah, you forgot your password. Too bad. Feels bad, man. And there is the modal. Cool. So there you have it, guys. We've learned how to use Bootstrap components with Vue and built out this little login component along the way. Now for me personally, I don't use Bootstrap as often as I used to, but I still use it for quick prototypes and demo apps like this one. I'll definitely be making use of libraries like this when I do use Bootstrap. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.